Hey, my name's TC Burr. Welcome to Yet, a podcast created to encourage you to get your goal or idea out of your head and into reality. On this podcast, you'll hear stories, encouragements, tips, and ideas to help you write your book, start your business, launch your podcast, or whatever it is you hope to accomplish. Because it's not that you haven't done it, it's just that you haven't done it yet. My guest today is Danielle Angel. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm super excited to have you on. So typically what I do with this is I allow my guests to do their own intros. There's a lot of ways I could describe and introduce you, but I figure you probably do it best. So in 30 seconds or less, would you tell folks kind of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Danielle Angel, and my day job, I work for a really large financial institution. I've been there forever, 17 years. I'm a risk manager, so that is what I do by day. And by night, I'm a Bulldog mom. I am a military wife, and I'm just your typical gal, just kind of taking care of all the things at home. And now I am proud to say that I'm a brand new business owner, which is really weird to say, and I still am not. I can't believe it. So that's kind of what I'm putting all my energy into these days.
That's awesome. So talk a little bit about kind of the business, because I mean, all the other stuff is cool. The corporate employee, the mom, the dog mom, all that kind of stuff, right? But what I really am interested in is the business. So talk a little bit about kind of what it is that you do and how you, it sounds like it's a relatively new thing. So how did you get into this business that you're into?
Yeah, so the name of the company is Salty Bulldog, and that, of course, was inspired by my love of bulldogs and really just dogs in general. This is a brand new business that literally I just started 2 months ago. It was official with the state of Virginia, so that was kind of cool to get the official stamp, again, and make it official of all the things. How the business started is it's really interesting. A good friend of mine, she started her own business in the dog training world earlier this year. And she was really excited to get her logo going, and she wanted to put her logo on all kinds of shirts and all the things, and people wanted to support her, and it was really exciting. And she was using, your standard services that I think a lot of people think of when you need a shirt and you just go onto Google and you search for it. And I was sitting with her one day and I was floored by the cost of what it costs to do that. And she was a brand new business owner with a commercial lease and, all the things that she was starting, trying to spend her money on to start her business, and swag. The cost of it was astronomical. I was shocked. Yeah. And so I said to her, hey, I think I can help you. Let me just try it. I love making things with my hands, and I love being crafty and doing things, and just give me a project and I'm going to try and figure it out. And so that's really where this came to play, is I was really doing this as a favor to help her with her business. And I loved doing it so much that I was like, hey, I love this. I want to do my own thing. I want to help other people, but I want to do my own thing. And so that's kind of where the thought came from and why I got inspired to do it, which again was more to help somebody else out who needed help, and really just wanted to infuse all that creative energy into something that I could call my own. So Salty Bulldog was born, again, inspired by my love of bulldogs and dogs in general. But I didn't want to just focus it on dog apparel and clothes. I really wanted to start a company that gives back. I am, giving back is very near and dear to my heart. So I not only want to, turn this into a business and something that I can pour my creative juices into, but I want to give back where I can. And not to spoil too much, but I'm actually working on creating a new product that I'm even more excited about, and I hope it works. And I'm really excited to see where this may or may not go if it works. So I can't share too much there yet, but maybe you can have me on again as a guest and I can share more later.
Oh, for sure. I love a good cliffhanger. That's awesome. So, and I love your story. This is one of my favorite stories of all the people that I've talked to, because your whole business started with, you were just helping somebody else. Like you saw an issue, a problem, like it's way too expensive to just go and order designs and order shirts and gear and all that kind of stuff. And you thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And you took that desire to help your friend, your love of bulldogs, and kind of your natural creative, like you say, you love working with your hands and creating and designing and doing all that stuff. And you turned it into a business, which I just think is the coolest thing. So what was the time frame like between when you started talking with your friend and just kind of doing the pro bono, let me help you out, to the light bulb moment of like, oh, you know what? I love this and I want this to be my thing. Like, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, it was actually pretty quick, TC.
Really?
It was one thing to just kind of take her logo and put it on some shirts, which was pretty cool. Like to design something on a computer and then to actually see it on apparel, but then to see people wearing it, it's like, I made
It's
that.
out there.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. And like, look at
Yeah.
it. And it's really interesting because they come to her workshops and her trials and you see it. And so as soon as I started to see that, I was like, this is weird, but this is also really cool. Like I did that. I made it, and we made
Yeah.
a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff together. So it was really quick. Like once I started to kind of like see that happen and see how like people reacted to outside of her logo, but then the other designs that we were working on, to see people love the design so much and love the quality of what I was making so much and appreciate it. Um, I was hooked pretty much immediately. And that's relatively very quickly of how I then was like, all right, I want to get serious about this. This is more about just helping her, which I'm still helping her, but I have my own designs of my own that I want to now work on and focus on and do. And so it was very quick. I would say all of this happened in a matter of 6 months, that
Wow.
I really started getting pretty serious about it. And TC, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going for it. I'm going to try, and it's either going to work or it's not, but I will never know if I don't try. So I'm just doing it. I'm taking it one day at a time and one step at a time, and I'm figuring it out as I go along, and we'll see where it goes.
That's so good to hear. I mean, there's so many different threads I could pull from what you just said, but like the idea that you're kind of figuring out it as you go, like I think that's all of us. I think those of us who are doing it, right, who have finally decided like it's time for me to write my book or launch my podcast or do whatever the thing is, like we're all figuring it out. And some of us are better at certain things than others. But I love that we can kind of learn as we go. We can fail and get back up and figure it out. And the thing is, like, for a long time, my first thing that kind of got me into this whole world of kind of self-improvement, business, whatever you want to call it, side hustle, was the book that I wanted to write. And for a long time, I just had these ideas and I just sat on them because I was like, well, what if no one reads it? Or I don't really even know how to write a book. And then it's just like, well, so at some point you just have to start doing it. Like, the fear that the unknown and the fear that I had of like, oh, it's going to be really hard. Well, yeah, it has been really hard, but it's also been super rewarding and I'm getting better. Like the more I do it, the better I get. So I love that attitude of like, hey, I don't know everything, but I'm doing it. And
Yep.
that's amazing. So, okay. So have you always had this kind of like, one of my guests talked about an entrepreneurial gene. Like he said, I was just kind of born with it. Like I was the kid doing the lemonade stand and all that. Like, is that you, or is that something that's kind of evolved as you've kind of moved toward the business that you're doing now?
Yeah, I am, that is not part of my DNA, right? It is not who I am. I don't like taking risks. Like I'm a risk manager. I don't like taking risks. I don't like the unknown, right? So for me, this is a really uncomfortable space to live in. It really, really is. I like the sure thing, the thing that is very dependable, the thing that I can count on. So for me, this is really scary. And again, I don't know what I'm doing. It's very uncomfortable territory for me. But I think what I do have though, TC, and what I've always had is a passion to create. and to do things with my hands. That is something that has been in my system for as long as I can remember. And for me, the outlet that I get from being able to do that, but also like do things with my dog, my other love, and give back overpowers like the fear that I have to want to go and to be a little bit of that entrepreneur, which I still don't even think of myself in that way. Because again,
Yeah.
I like the dependable, I like the sure thing. That's what I am through and through. But again, for me, it's the ability to be able to create and be creative and tie that into the other areas of my life that are so important to me, and have this as an outlet and as a stress reliever. Full disclosure, this is very therapeutic for me to do this type of thing. All of that outweighs the fear of the unknown that I have in doing all of this. So, again, I still don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I'm not, although I am, right? It's just really
But you
weird.
are. Yeah.
I
Right.
know.
Right. That's awesome. So, okay, but you're still brand new to it, right? Like you're a couple
Yeah.
months into having officially a business registered with the state, right? So I'm curious and maybe you haven't gotten there yet, but have you encountered any big challenges along the way? And can you talk about kind of what maybe one or two of those were and how you approach overcoming or moving past or learning from challenges that you've experienced?
Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of a decision that you have to make when you're starting a business with even just figuring out the mechanics of what type of business you want to create. So my business is an LLC. Not everybody does that. And you really just have to explore and do what you think is right for your business and your life. And I've opted to go down the LLC path. That path, there's a lot of red tape when you go down that path. So for me, like figuring out that piece of it and just establishing what I wanted to be, what I wanted it to be, and then how to go about doing that was like for me the first challenge that I encountered. And again, you just use the good old internet, right? Do your research and tap the shoulders of friends who have maybe gone down a similar path to kind of help you get to the right place. So for me, it was not a challenge that I couldn't overcome, but it did require a lot of thought and preparation and just kind of, getting the right path to be able to get that established and get it done. Outside of that, everything else is new. So again, like the other thing I mentioned, I'm creating that new product. I don't know again what I'm doing there either. So this is another challenge that I am just trying to like figure out this path that I'm walking. It's been a really interesting one. So I will have more again intel there as I get further down this path. But those are like the two biggest challenges that I've had thus far. Otherwise, everything else has been, I think for me has been easy. But again, this is still a brand new venture for me. So I don't know what I don't know yet.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you mentioned, going to the internet and being able to find information, which I think it's awesome that we live in a time where we can find, so much limitless information about anything. But you also talked about mentors, which I think is super important as well. So did you have, as you were getting started and even now, do you have a person or people that you've kind of gone to and learned from as you're doing it?
So I have a couple of friends that are in various stages of, owning their own business. And it's been really helpful to have friends that are in various stages of their journey to be able to just bounce ideas off of or learn from things that they learned from. So in addition to having like those friends, of course, again, just doing the research, online to really just make your own educated decisions on what you think is best for your situation. But all of that information, it just can't, having someone that you trust and that to be able to give you their advice and just share those learnings with you is, quite frankly, the most important thing. And it's been so incredibly helpful on this journey.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I have for you, because I imagine, I don't have an LLC personally, but I imagine that there's a lot that goes into owning and running a company. So do you have any systems or tools or hacks that you use to kind of keep yourself organized and keep everything running smoothly?
Um, I use an Excel spreadsheet and many of them.
How did I know that you were going to say
Yes.
Excel spreadsheet?
Super sophisticated over here. I love me some Excel, and so even if you send me some fancy software, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use my tried and true and what I love. It is, but that's what I use right now because it is just a
Mm,
company of me. I am doing everything.
that's
Um,
right.
Depending on where this company goes, that's not going to be sustainable. But for as long as I can hang on to my Excel spreadsheets, TC, that's what I'm going to do. But I mean, there are loads of tools out there that are incredibly helpful. A lot of them come with a fee though, right? So that's
Sure.
what I'm
Yeah.
balancing right now is I am trying to save money where I can in areas where I can, areas that I can do myself without having to spend the money in those areas because I can right now I can afford to spend the time to do that. A little bit more tedious work on my end is fine because I'm investing in other areas of my business on the things that I can't do. I can't make a prototype. There are things that I can't do that cost money. And I would much rather take the funding that I have and the resources that I have monetarily and spend it in the areas that I can't do rather than spend it on services that, in my opinion, right now at this stage of the business where I am is more of a nice to have. Again, depending on where this business goes, that could totally flip flop. And that would be great if that's eventually where this goes and where I get to. But for right now, I'm trying to just delicately balance things that I can do for free myself in the areas and that using the tools that I know and love and am comfortable with and saving the money to spend it in areas that I can't do. So that's kind
Yeah.
of how I've been thinking about it and what I think that you have to do when you're starting a new business, you know?
For sure. Yeah. I think, for most of the people that are going to be listening to this, most of the guests that I bring on are not, are not super elite wealthy where we can just hire out every aspect of what we're trying to, I mean, even as I started putting together a podcast, there are certain things that you just have to, like, there's investment you have to make, but it's being smart about understanding where you need to kind of spend the big investments monetarily and where maybe you can take a little bit of ramp up time to learn how to do something, or there's certain things that you can take on and maybe it takes you longer to get to the result that you want, but it's worth it. And you learn along the way. And again, just being kind of smart about where you're making those investments, I think is pretty great, and pretty
Yeah,
critical.
I also think, TC, that it's really important to understand and be self-aware of what your strengths and your weaknesses are, right?
For
Like
sure.
I can stare at an Excel spreadsheet all day, every day, and I got it, right? Like I have that attention to detail. But like certain areas of the business I know are my weaknesses. And so I'm not going to spend my time there, right? I might hire a consultant to help with that or hire a service to help with certain areas of things, right? So I think it's really important for a little bit of self-awareness and some self-reflection to be able to know when to call it quits, to say, all right, I'm good at this. I'm going to stick to this, but I stink at this. And so I need to farm that off to someone who can get that done way better and way faster than I can. So I also think that that's another important aspect as well.
And there may be some areas where, depending on the level of effort and the return on investment, it may be something that you don't need to invest in at all, right? Like there are certain things I'm doing where I'm kind of self-evaluating now. Maybe I don't invest as much time there. Maybe I focus my energy over here, and that's something that I can, ramp up on later or not, right? So just, I think that's important too, to understand, like, is it worth, is the juice worth the squeeze for some of the things that you're doing? And sometimes it's not. And sometimes, to your point, maybe it's not your strong suit, but it's something that you can find someone else who can do for a fee or otherwise. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think that's super smart. Okay. So this is a podcast for people who have a goal or an idea. Maybe it's a business, maybe it's something else, but it's something that they want to do. And for some of them, maybe like me, they've wanted to do it for a long time, but they never have. or maybe they're just getting started out, or maybe like you, they tried something and thought, man, I love this. How do I turn it into something that I can do on a more regular basis and maybe even make some money in the process? So if you were talking to somebody who was just starting out, wanted to start their own business, what key pieces of advice would you give to that person? And maybe another way to say it is like, what are some mistakes that you've seen people make that you wish they could avoid?
Yeah.
So you answer it either way.
You may have heard the saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? Well,
Okay.
so that's, how do you eat an elephant? Like a lot of people think about, oh my gosh, an elephant is huge. And how would I consume all of that? And I can't take a bite that big, right? Like,
Yeah.
just one bite at a time, right? If you were to eat an elephant, I'm not advocating for eating elephants, by the way. I love elephants. But I think what is so important, TC, is you just have to take baby steps.
Yes.
And just take one tiny little step and think of the here and the now. If you think too big and if you think like, oh my gosh, like I would love to run a multi-million-dollar company. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, or whatever, right? Like if you think of that end goal and that end goal is so big, then people would get intimidated. I know that I would get intimidated if I think about like managing this giant corporation and like, I don't know how to do that, right? And so if you think about that, that is really scary and it's really intimidating. And a lot of people are just going to go, you know what? I can't do that. I can't. And I can't do it right now either, right? But I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the day to day. What can I do just to get this going? And so, okay, I'm going to think of a company name. I'm going to think of a brand. I'm going to think of a mission statement. I'm going to think of just the very core basics. And each day you have a task, or each week you have a task. And eventually you get that checklist done and you just check the things off as you go along. And you just chunk away at it one bite at a time. So for me, that is really critical and core. I have seen friends that have taken on way too much. And they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. And they're all over the place. And I see them just swirling and they're super overwhelmed and they're super stressed because they're trying to get to the big giant thing, or they're taking on way too much. And it causes them to be distracted. And so they're doing 30,000 things, not super great. Whereas if they just focused on one area and focused on doing that really well and then expanded from there, they would be so much less stressed, in my opinion, and they would be set up for more success, right? So I think I would answer that question like in those two core ways, just like really focus on the core aspects of whatever it is that you want to do and start really, really small and just take it one step at a time, one bite at a time. Eventually, after a few weeks have gone by or a few months have gone by, you'll be able to look back and go, oh my gosh, like look at all of these things that I did. And you almost won't believe it. But if you think about the 30,000 things that you have to do, it's really overwhelming and it's really intimidating. And a lot of folks will just go, you know what? I don't have time for that. But if you just do it little by little, it all adds up. And next thing you know, here you are.
That's so good. I mean, the way that I've kind of described this in other situations is I've talked about like the picture of, you're standing at the base of a mountain looking at the peak, and nobody gets there by doing a box jump and one move and then you're up at the top. You get there by putting one foot in front of the other, by doing the next thing and doing little small repeatable tasks over and over and over leads you to progress. So like with my book, part of the reason why I didn't write it is because, man, who can write a whole book? Like that's just a whole thing. But I started realizing like the only thing that's keeping me from being a writer is the fact that I'm not writing. And so I started back in August of this year, I started writing not a lot, but like 300 to 800 words per day, which is like a few paragraphs, right? But I've done it every day since then. And if all goes according to plan, I'm going to eclipse 70,000 words which is the target that I was going for by the end of the year. And the only thing I did literally is I've already had all the ideas, and I just sat down with my computer and started writing. So I think that's so good. Just, it's important. I do think it's important to have balance though, because you don't want to lose sight of the vision of the dream, right? But you can't measure your success today against what you think the end result might be in 20 years, right?
Yeah.
There's no such thing as overnight success. There's a reason why people work and work and work and then see results. Like that's how it works. I think that's awesome.
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things that I really want this podcast to be is an encouragement to people. And so I don't know if you're familiar with like the 5 love languages, but I'm a huge words of affirmation person. I love encouragement. I love to encourage other people. I think that encouragement begets encouragement. So the more encouraged I am, the more I'm going to encourage other people. And I love hearing encouraging things that other people have had said to them. So I'm curious, what is the most encouraging thing that anyone's ever said or done for you?
I don't know that I have like a quote or something that verbatim that I can go back and repeat, but I have heard from, someone very close to me, Danielle, you can do anything that you put your mind to. You've always been able to do that. It doesn't matter. You figure it out, and you can do anything that you put your mind to. And I'm very proud of that. I've done that. I kind of just figure everything out, and I love doing that. It's also part of my passion and who I am. So having someone else or others recognize that kind of fueled me to go, you know what, I can do this. I can figure it out. So I think a lot of people suffer from like that self-critic, that little voice inside their head that's like, hey, no, you can't do that, or that's not your area of expertise. And a lot of times that overshadows and prevents us from being able to move forward. And so I would say to people, if you have one of those, just squash that sucker or push it off of your shoulder or wherever it lives and just give it a try, because you will never know what something can turn into, what an idea can turn into if you don't try. And what's the worst that can happen? It might not work. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares at the end of the day? You tried it. So do you either want to try it and maybe not do well and, but learn from your mistakes, and who knows what that might turn into, or what connections you might make along the way that might turn into something else? Or live with the regret of, man, I had that great idea and I was too chicken to go for it. So I would say just take a bite of the elephant. Just do it.
Yeah.
One small bite.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're so right, man. Like, I don't picture anybody, on their deathbed thinking, man, I so regret all those chances I took and all the things that I tried. Like, people's regret is that they didn't do their thing, right? That's always like, of course. And I love your perspective too. Like, if you don't, hit the success mark, and by the way, I think, we need to stop comparing our success against what other people say success is. We get to define what success is for our thing. But if we don't hit the mark that we set out to, that's not a failure, right? We gain experience. We gain lessons learned. We gain the satisfaction of knowing that we gave it a shot. And we realize that, you know what? Maybe I'm not as good at that as I thought I was. Maybe I don't like it as much as I thought I did. And guess what? Now that frees me up. I can cross that one off the list and go try something else. So yeah,
that's right.
No, that's awesome.
Exactly right. And who knows what connections you'll make along the way. Right?
That's right. For sure.
Like that is so huge, I think. And it's a lot of times it's something that we take for granted, but you don't know what those connections could eventually lead to. Networking is so important. And you never know what people you're going to meet, or whose lives you're going to touch, or whose story you share that will impact someone else's life. And that is energizing in itself to even just kind of think about that. So that's a really cool thing that, again, I think we might take for granted, is just that personal connection that we make with one another, and what that, what those touch points can do, and how you can impact somebody else's life by just, making that connection. So
Yeah. On that note, when I first started working with you 6, 7 years ago, I never dreamed that you might be a guest on a podcast that I would start at some point in the future. So that just
Right?
goes to underscore your point. That's amazing. Well, Danielle, it has been awesome having you on. Thank you so much. I know you're going to be successful. You've got a passion. You've got a great business that you've started. And I know, based on what I know about you, one of the things I love most about you is your attention to detail. And it really is true that like, if you set out to do something, you're going to do it. So
Do
I'm
it.
so excited for you. And, I'm looking forward to find out about what this new product is. So last question before I let you go, where can people contact you, find out more about the work you're doing? Do you have a website, social media? How do people follow you?
I do. So, my website is not launched yet, but it will be soon. The domain is Shop Salty Bulldog. So just be on the lookout for that. It's not live yet, but I own it, and it will be live in the next month or two. And then Instagram is the best way to get in contact with me. I am on it way more than I like to admit. So to find me there, you can either search my name, Danielle Angel, or it's DL Angel Bulldog Mom. And so it's one of a kind. You'll be able to find me that way. But yes, Instagram is the best way to get me. But keep an eye out for the website because it'll launch in the next month or two. So I'm really excited about that too.
Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I'll let you go, but yeah, I'll plan to stay in touch and hopefully have you back on again.
Absolutely. TC, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, share the podcast with your friends. I would love to get these stories, encouragements, tips, and ideas out to as many people as possible. And this is a brand new podcast, so I'd love your help in spreading the word. Also, I would really appreciate it if you would scroll down to the bottom of your podcast app and rate and review the shows. Your reviews mean so much to me, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Lastly, if you have any questions or ideas for the show, I would love to connect. You can find me on Instagram at YetPodcast or send me an email, yetpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, keep working on your goals, and I'll see you soon.